What was the Eureka moment? Were you walking in a park in London, visiting sites in Cairo? Was it in the shower? Where did you come up with the idea of Dupe? I said, I need to do this. Great. Thank you, Urvi, for that introduction. And a big thanks to Frans on behalf of myself and Gaurav. Thank you for joining us today. Gaurav, I know I would have loved to have been here. So I'm going to pretend to be both me and him. So you're going to get double energy from me, Frans. Frans, looks like this is like almost a hometown event. You're zooming in from Abu Dhabi. I'm based in Dubai.
Oh, yeah, correct. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I'm sitting in Hub 71, so the tech ecosystem of Abu Dhabi. So I call this home. So, but you know, as Dopay, we are active in Egypt. That's our home market, and you know, we are also based out of London. So London, Cairo, Abu Dhabi.
Frans, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the founding story of Dopay. What was the Eureka moment? Were you walking in a park in London, visiting sites in Cairo? Was it in the shower? Where did you come up with the idea of Dupe? I said, I need to do this.
Yeah, so I've been involved in financial services in, I would say, frontier markets since 2002. I was the co-founder of another startup that basically built a national clearinghouse platform in Egypt. So basically all domestic money transfers are processed through that platform. And basically what that platform does is, you know, you have all the banks connected into a system. And if you transfer money from one bank account that sits, like say at Citi, and that has to go to HSBC, it's basically handled through that platform. And we thought that if you would have such a platform in a country like Egypt, then employers could ask their employees just to open a bank account at their preferred bank, and then the company could simply transfer their salary into their bank account, just like, you know, in the country where I'm from, the Netherlands, right? But we were a bit naive, to be honest. I mean, I come from a country where everybody gets a bank account from the day you're born, right? And I couldn't imagine that, you know, not having a bank account, in particular if you have a job. But the banks were simply not interested in opening bank accounts for most employees. So despite having this fantastic platform, the banks were not interested. And I remember sitting one day with a CEO of one of the largest banks in Egypt, talking about this. And he said, look, Frans, I can make the same money that you're making by spending one day myself in a dealing room, right? So why should I do this as a bank? I mean, the Egyptian banks make so much money on arbitrage and retail banking, you know, that was basically a distraction. So after that, I basically thought, you know, guys, if you're not gonna do it, then, you know, let me do it myself. So that's when I decided to start Dopay, and the rest, you know, I think the rest is a little bit of history already, I guess. So yeah, that's the story.
So you started out, sort of the mission of the mandate you started out with was almost kind of financial inclusion, spreading, you know, bringing people into the banking sector, filling this gap, which is that there was a lot of unbanked, you know, high percentages of the population are still unbanked. How did you operationalize this? You know, you said you had experience in Egypt already, but how did you make this work, particularly as someone who, I don't know how much time you'd spent in Egypt, but as you said, you're from the Netherlands, you're Dutch. How did you basically say, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to build a bank or a fintech solution in this country, but operationalizing it? Walk us through the steps.
Yeah, so I lived in Egypt for almost 4 years. and that was in the time that we built that clearing platform. So and through that, I built a lot of connections. I understood basically what is happening, and jointly with a few Egyptian friends, we basically started off Dupe. And we were lucky because to do this, we're obviously not a bank, and what you need is you need a banking partner, right? So the regulation in Egypt, and that's in most countries in the Middle East, doesn't allow a non-financial institution to offer these kind of services, right? So the only way how you can do it is by piggybacking on a license of a bank. And that's why we call it kind of virtual banking. So virtual banking means we are basically using the infrastructure of the bank, the licensing of the bank, and it's a little bit like in what you see in the mobile world, right? So in the mobile world, you have like Tesco, who is a mobile virtual operator, right? So they don't own their own network. They use, I think it's O2 or so as their network, and through that they offer that service. So something similar is what we do. We basically pitched it. We were lucky that we ended up in an accelerator program, the Barclays Accelerator, and Barclays at that time was still active in Egypt, and they were immediately, this is what we have to do, right? We have this problem, and the managing director of Barclays at that time, he said, we miss a lot of clients because we have these big corporate customers with the staff, and we don't want to have these employees in our books because they don't meet our thresholds. And he saw, well, this is really an added value. So that is how it basically started. Just by networking and knowing people, and
And so it's kind of tell us about a bit about the product. It's a payroll, partly a payroll solution, and there's obviously a card attached. Walk us through like what the products look like and how those grew one after the other.
Yeah, so our approach is we are a B2B2C fintech company. So let me take a step back. So basically what you try to do is you try to break a cash cycle, right? So when you break a cash cycle, when you look at it, you have companies on one side, you have employees or people at the other side. And companies pay salaries to these people, and people use that salary to buy goods and services. And that is how the money goes around, right? So if you want to break that cash cycle, you essentially have two options. You can either break it at the people, and that's where a lot of the wallet schemes sit, or you can break it at the company. And that is what we do. And we do that because there you have the chance to digitize 100% of the salary, right? Whereas if people are still being paid in cash and they have a kind of wallet, they need to have a real incentive to put money in that wallet, So and that's you see that in very low balances. So that's what we do. And what we do as a company, we provide a platform to companies which allows them to instantly open accounts for the employees, literally in seconds. And the next day, these employees get a prepaid card. And the company, they can just transfer money to our platform, and then 24/7, 365 days a year, they can pay their employees, and the payments are made instantly. So that's what we do.
Right. So it's a payroll proposition. You go through the company. It's B2B2C, and then I'm often a non-banked client. I get a prepaid card, so I can then basically get my salary on that card, and I can get salary advances as well, right? Because that's been a big thing in many markets recently. So if you could talk a little bit about like just the range of products, how the salary advance product works, and also if you could talk a little bit about Egypt, because that's obviously your home market or the company's home market. Why is Egypt, we talked about the underbanked, the penetration, but there are a lot of big emerging markets with low banking penetration. What makes Egypt so interesting to build a fintech and this kind of fintech?
Well, first of all, it's a big country, right? It's over 100 million people. 2.4 million companies from small to large. So the size of the country is massive. Secondly, I think the central bank of Egypt has done a lot of work during the last years, right? So they have come up with several regulations that makes it possible for fintechs to go into the market, and that's why you see now so many fintechs in Egypt. They're really welcoming it. So and then Egypt as a country, it has a very young population, very tech savvy. Active. I mean, there are more mobile phones out there than number of people, and the country has gone obviously through some challenges, revolutions and so on, and I think it's one of the few countries in the world that even grow economically in the time of COVID, right? And it means so it's really a market where a lot of things are happening. It's politically quite stable. So, the whole country is focused on, progressing, and that makes Egypt fantastic. It's in Africa, it's after Nigeria, the second largest population, and in the Middle East, it's the largest population. Yeah.
Talk about the journey in terms of timeline. When did you sort of start? Like, when did you go live? When you had beta, pilot? When did you go live? And talk also, I'm sure the audience are listening to this live or on replay would love to hear some of the war stories, like some of the times when you were like, I'm not sure if it's going to work, or this is not working. Do I carry on? Like, there must have been, I assume, moments where you're thinking, this is not going to work. And so I'd love to hear some of those kind of challenge stories as well, and how you overcame those.
Yeah, well, how long do we have? I think.
I mean, everything doesn't just go in a straight line and it's all beautiful and sunny and happy and.
No, yeah. Sometimes it happens like that, right? But I don't think in these countries, and particularly because you're working in a regulated environment, right? And everything is still new, and so I think the biggest challenge that we had was that we couldn't scale initially. And why couldn't we scale? Because the way how the whole model was set up was that every time that when we onboarded a company, we basically had to open a bank account for that company in the books of our partner bank. So that that took 3 months or more, with a lot of paperwork, and there was a huge dropout. So we needed to change that, and to change that, that took us a few years. Why? Because what we wanted is that we wanted to work basically with every bank, right? And that we could create a virtual account, so a virtual business account. So that was not embedded in the regulations. So we had to convince the central bank of that. Then we had to convince the partner bank and find another partner bank, and build the whole model. It was a complete pivot, and that took us quite some time. Luckily, we came out of this earlier this year, so we got the final approval from the central bank. But man, this took such a long time, because every fintech these days has also to go through a security process, security clearance process. So, we had to go through that as well. So we got the agent banking license, and, after that, we succeeded to conclude our Series A. So we raised $18 million in Series A. And now, we are launching our new platform. So we are super excited about that. And we have a lot of customers already queued up. But, I would say you have to be resilient, and, particularly, I think when you have to be regulated, I would say you have to make sure you have enough money, because it always takes longer than you think it takes. And you're dealing with institutions that don't have the pace that you have. They work for big banks, or they work for central banks, so they go home end of the day, they don't have to worry about their salary, and they go on holiday and whatever. But as a startup, you think, come on, I have only so much runway, and that's difficult. And I hear a lot of those stories, particularly in this region, right? Because it's not that easy. For instance, in Europe, it's very easy to start, right? So it's much more. The ecosystem is there. You don't have to do that yourself. You have companies that you can piggyback on that are already there. So anyone that does this here in the region, make sure you have enough money, and be lean enough in the beginning. Don't scale too fast.
Frans, could you elaborate a little bit more about that comparison of, say, MENA versus Europe doing a startup or a fintech or whatever? I mean, what did you mean by, because dealing with big companies or governments, I thought would be the same everywhere in the world, right? Whether you're in the Netherlands or the UK, big banks will take forever to deal with you. And what made it harder here? Is it just the whole startup ecosystem is younger? It's just happening very recently.
Yeah. So for us, for instance, right? So we issue cards, and that means that you need a bank to sponsor you. So BIN sponsorship. So and that is new in this region, right? So if you go to Europe or the US, I would say in Europe you have like 20-25 financial institutions that offer that as a service. So you can shop around and you can start, right? But here that's not the case. I mean, we are still in Egypt the only one that is doing that. There's now a few others that enter this space, but we are the only one that is actually live. And so that also means that for the bank, they also have, it's new for the bank. So you end up with compliance, and you have to navigate together the regulations, and that's not easy, right? And there's also a question, why should we do that, right? Why should we do that? Are we creating competitors for ourselves? There is that kind of mindset. Whereas in Europe, a lot of banks have already recognized that being a banking as a platform can generate additional revenue for those banks. And in fact, meanwhile, there are some very good reports on that show that banks that can make that do this, they make a higher return on their investment than banks that don't do that, right? But the region here is not that far. There are a few that are really doing it now, and want to go into that, so that's good. But we are not at the same level as Europe yet.
Right. So you're beginning to see the emergence of more of a sort of bank as a service proposition or platforms. It's still very early days.
Yeah, so there's a few players out there that try it here now in the region, right? And there are really some banks that say, this is another way for us making money, right? So let's take Egypt. 100 million people. So how many people can you really get as a bank, right? So maybe 10 million, 20 million. But if you become a platform and you facilitate, like, I don't know, 20, 50 fintechs that all have services tailored towards specific communities, you have a pretty good chance that as a bank, if you're the engine behind it, you empower these communities, you can make a lot of money. But you need a vision, and luckily we see that now, right? But that took a while. And I think in a way, Dupe, we paved the way for other fintechs. So it's particularly in Egypt, right? But I still hear that that, for instance, we're both sitting in the UAE. It is extremely difficult, right? It's not like, okay, I can just go. This is the price list, and I can start going. That is how it should be, right? But unfortunately, it's not like that yet. But it will come. It will come. It will take time. And then the question is always, what is the right time, right? Are you taking all that pain like we did, or are you gonna wait till the moment that it's all there, right? So that's the big question.
Looking ahead, Frans, say a few years down the road, how do you see Dupe? What kind of size are we? What kind of reach are we? How many, if you can share any numbers or ballpark numbers, like how many clients do you have now? What was it like early this year? Where do you think you're going to? What's the vision? And by sort of breadth, if you like, how much of a more broad-based financial services player, a virtual bank, will you look like in the future? You obviously came out of a few very specific products, and then I assume you want to go much broader.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, we want to grow, right? Sustainably. So to address the enormous opportunities, that Egypt and the MENA region, have to offer. So thank God there is a growing appetite for fintech solutions among businesses and individuals. So there are some nice reports around that. So, for instance, Deloitte published a very interesting report. What are business looking for, right? So, for instance, 75% of the businesses in the MENA region are looking for fintech solutions because they look for something that's more easy than they have today. So grow the number. Secondly, we will grow the range of services. So you have to think about indeed salary advance, credit, savings, insurance. These products are all part of our roadmap. As we build our user base, eventually what we want to try to do is build a digital marketplace, because the thing is that in countries like Egypt, the liquidity is not the problem, right? There is enough liquidity in the market to provide credit. The challenge is really in the distribution and in the repayment, and that's where we as Dupe fit in. So we are working with our partner banks that can provide the liquidity. So they have a balance sheet. We don't want to build our own balance sheet, because that would also slow us down. So that's the second thing we are looking at. Thirdly, obviously we are looking at geographical expansion. So with this fundraise, we are gonna grow in other markets in the region. So we will announce that soon, which markets that will be.
So it's still hidden, is it? It's still confidential.
Yeah, I look. Somebody said that I don't. How should I use I don't bluff enough for this region, right? I'm Dutch, so I'm too transparent. So I say we are banking beyond talking. So we rather prefer to announce it when we are there, and not announce like we are going there no, we announce things well there, because that's the thing also in the region, you know, when you start talking, yeah, people come and say they want it, right? So yeah, I go a little bit against the nature maybe of the region.
Frans, I know we just touched upon, probably at a very surface level, your story and your business, but that was a really interesting introduction to Dopay, to yourself. Hopefully we can keep this conversation going. Thanks so much for joining us today on our Fintech Founders Series. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having me. Thank you so much.